How are we? How are we? Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Little Q&A on our cask program. Give folks a chance to join in, starting just a couple of minutes early here now. I know there's a few waiting on YouTube and Facebook. So how's it going? You're all very welcome. And let me know where you are. Are you drinking anything tonight? It's a bit early on some parts of the coast in the United States. I know, 4 o'clock on the West Coast. And lots of you watching the old golf at the same time. The Masters there about to finish as well. Sadly, not an Irish win this time. All right, so I'm pouring a drop to get us kicked off suitably. Keeper's Heart, the first release from O'Shaughnessy Distilling, which we'll be talking all about tonight. Stick it up here in the box for you to see. All right, so we're going to talk about our cask program tonight, our first ever Whiskey Club Cask. So I'm going to answer all your questions, and I have a few slides to kind of go through and give you an overview of the program as well. All right, Stacey, how's it going? We're very welcome. Cheers. Having a bit of Keeper's Heart. 10-year-old Jeff, good man. Jeff always matches whatever we're doing. He's got a bottle to match it, and normally a better bottle than we even have. So fair play to Jeff and Dee down there in Indianapolis. Brian Redden's got Keeper's Heart as well. Well done, Brian. Brian busy preparing for a big day tomorrow. Good luck tomorrow, Brian. Eric is joining from Minneapolis with a pour of Keeper's Heart. 10-year-old. Fair play to you. You've come with the goods. Michael Patrick Meehan is in St. Louis, sipping a bit of Redbreast PX. Good man. I think you just picked that up today, if I recall, from the posts I saw a little bit earlier. Great to see Keeper's Heart making its way around the country and you all getting your hands on it. The 10-year-old is a lovely drop as well. I have a sample of that I'm 3/4 of the way through, so I thought I'd have the regular pour tonight. Brian Sharp has got Sailor's Home. Lovely drop. The Haven, just returned from the Irish whiskey desert that is Cabo. Yeah, Cabo wouldn't be known now. It wouldn't be high up on the list of Irish whiskey destinations. Although a lovely place to get an old suntan. There wouldn't be many whiskies there. Johnny's sipping 2 stacks. Apricot Brandy in Long Beach. Good man, Johnny. Greg Anderson, always bringing the goods. Midleton 2021. Very nice. Very also appropriate for us discussing Midleton as well tonight. There's Dermot after drinking his pint of Powers John's Lane out the back, cooking his sausages earlier. How are you, Dermot? And Amy is joining us from Gilbert, Arizona, nothing in the glass, about to head to dinner here for a short bit. Good stuff. Amy will be recording this anyway, and we'll have the replay ready for you tomorrow before we go live with the registration for the participation in the Club Cask. So if you can't all stay tonight, we'll record this, obviously, and have this available for you as soon as we can up on the website. Eamon just finished watching I'm going to assume the golf. And sadly, despite a late surge there by Rory McIlroy, there was no big upset. Michael Considine drinking Redbreast 12-year-old. Good man, Michael. David Scott Teeling single malt. Lovely stuff. Dave, early for you. Probably still at work. Sláinte. Hope all is well. Brian says, nice timing, waiting for the Masters to complete. I thought it'd be over by now. I had to turn off my other tab as the noise would be interfering. I was watching it all the way there till almost the end. Eamon says, now watching a lock-in unlike any other. Yeah, this is the first. Making a bit of history here now with this semi-lock-in. All right. So what we're going to do this evening is we're going to go over the details of our first Stories and Sips Whiskey Club Cask. And when we launched the club in the end of October last year, we announced that we would have our first ever Club Cask with O'Shaughnessy Distilling, with Brian Nation, former Master Distiller of the Midleton Distillery, who would collaborate with us on us being able to release our first Club Cask. And so we're now a good few months into our club. We've had a number of quarterly tasting events. We've had monthly Meet the Maker events. We've got our first whiskey bottle has landed in San Francisco and is making its way to Folsom Wine and Spirits for us. And now this is our first Club Cask. It's taken some time to get this far. I thought I'd be a little bit further ahead, and there's no delays really, except for there's nobody to blame for the delays except myself. The amount of boxes that have to be checked and make sure everything is done correctly, legally, and efficiently and cost effectively, etc., just takes a lot longer than I expected. And I've discovered that half of running a whiskey club is waiting for all the pieces to be in place, and all the pieces don't always come at the same time. But no worries, we've got our first Club Cask about to hit, and we can roll straight into our next Club Cask within a couple of months. And so things will start to gather momentum now. And I keep saying this with every time we have a bit of a live stream, that sometimes just it seems like things are a little bit slower than we'd like them to be, but we're all very impatient. We want everything yesterday, but a bit like the whiskey, takes a bit of time. So we're looking forward to this first collaboration, our first Club Cask. And I'm really excited at the number of expressions of interest in participating in this first Club Cask, and the number of expressions of interest through the form that I shared with you on social media and through your email. It's on the Stories and Sips website as well, is well oversubscribed. So we have more people interested in buying more parts of this program than there are parts available. So we'll talk about how that'll work in a second. Steve joining us from Colorado Springs. Good stuff, Steve. Welcome. Writer's Tears Ice Wine Cask, lovely drop of whiskey. Their best whiskey for my money. Chris Herman, good to see you, Chris. Greg Anderson, Yankees and Red Sox game will have to wait. And all the good things come to those who wait. And Brian hitting it on the nail on the head. It's okay. Whiskey is waiting too. Yeah. So, but saying that, all of these pieces are starting to come together, and we're starting to gather some momentum, and there are some great upcoming little surprises and tasting kits and more whiskey, potentially whiskey bottlings, etc. in the works. So we're not going to slow down. If anything, it's only going to pick up, and it's this first 6 months I reckon are going to be the slowest. So anyway, I'm the hardest on myself. Doesn't sound like you're very hard on me at all. Nobody's chasing me down saying, when's that cask available? It's just me, but I want to get it all together and all nicely buttoned up and get us all together and celebrating around these great casks and bottles, and just have more Irish whiskey to celebrate with. So with that being said, tonight is all about our first Club Cask. And our Club Cask, we're really delighted that we're privileged that we get to participate in a Club Cask with the legendary Brian Nation, the Master Distiller, formerly of Irish Distillers, operator of Midleton Distillery, where Brian was there for 20 plus years, and now of O'Shaughnessy Distilling in Minneapolis in Minnesota. So I want to share with you the details of the distillery, the cask, the whiskey, the distiller, the logistics, the maturation, all the bits that are part of this. I know many of you will have read through the information online. You might have questions. So feel free to put as many questions as you want into the chat at any time. I get to every single one of them. I'm not going to bed till I have all the questions answered. I think the presentation of the few slides will answer most of them, but I bet there's a half dozen or more that I haven't even thought of that you'll say to me, but what about this? What about that? Well, that's great, because then you'll help me create the information that I'll need to supply before we go live tomorrow. The cask program itself will open up tomorrow at 11 o'clock Irish time, 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And it'll happen via email. So I'll talk about the logistics of that. Does it come with keys to a castle, says Jeff? Well, that is the first question we've received tonight, and we will immediately bar Jeff from the event. He has derailed us considerably. No keys to a castle, but there's keys to the whiskey, as you see here on the front of the label. So there are keys involved, just not to a castle. All right, so let us get started. And again, we're recording this. It'll be available on YouTube, on Facebook. We'll put it on our website under the Whiskey Club section on storiesandsips.com. There is a section for the whiskey cask where you can find the details of pre-registering between now and tomorrow as well. Most of you already have. In fact, more of you have than there is whiskey available. Terrible trouble. But we'll figure out what to do about that. All right. Let's go fancy with some slides. Notions. So it's our first Club Cask. So let's talk about the distillery. So we're very fortunate to be collaborating with one of the most exciting distilleries in the United States over the last couple of years for many reasons. It's O'Shaughnessy Distilling Company in Minneapolis in Minnesota. And you might, if you're new here, be wondering, why is he talking about a distillery in America? Isn't Stories and Sips all about Irish whiskey? It is, and it is that we have found ourselves in over the last year or two becoming quite close to those who are, let's say, Irish adjacent. And when I say Irish adjacent, I mean distilleries doing really interesting things in the United States related to Irish whiskey, and in most cases involving Irish whiskey or Irish grain. And the two of those are Talnua Distillery in Arvada, just outside Denver in Colorado, and O'Shaughnessy Distilling Company in Minneapolis in Minnesota. Both of them have Irish ties and Irish links, including whether it's using Irish grain or Irish whiskies in some of their blends as well. So we're collaborating for our first cask with O'Shaughnessy Distilling, and we could, of course, couldn't we have gone to any of the 40 operating distilleries in Ireland and chosen one of those? But the chance to be able to work with Brian Nation, the Master Distiller, I think is a unique one, and certainly something I wanted to take advantage of, and just to purely, even for selfish reasons, just to be able to learn about whiskey maturation and be able to taste one of the first whiskeys coming from Brian Nation's endeavors in the United States. So really excited that we're partnering with O'Shaughnessy Distilling on this one. So it newly opened distillery. We had a great lock-in event last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. I'm losing all track of time. Are we locked down? Are we locked in? What are we doing? In any case, we did a great, fantastic lock-in. Brian even took to the airwaves for an old song, as is the case when you come on the lock-in. And so it's a really exciting distillery, a massive complex just in the outskirts of Minneapolis, with more than just a distillery on site. I mean, it's a destination, it's a restaurant, it's a bar, it's an experience, it's a place where you'll hold your company retreat as well as distilling whiskey. I want to show you a little bit of drone footage of the that was released just prior to the distillery opening. Some of you may have seen this, but it gives you some sense of the scale of the building prior to them opening the doors.
Did you see this light fixture?
Oh, I love it.
It reminds me of all the copper piping that goes into our distillation process.
Interesting.
Stings the nostril.
Sounds good. See you upstairs.
In days gone by, it's the customs guy who held the key to the spirit safe. What makes the spirit safe so special is it's here we get to the heart of the distillate.
What you mixing, Pip? Check out this view. These fire pits are gonna be great.
Sounds good. We'll make that happen.
I love this view.
The heart of this distillery, it's in these copper pot stills.
It's pretty amazing. One take. It was Brian Nation flying his company helicopter through the distillery. Fair play to you, Brian. So the distillery is now open. Here are those 3 copper pot stills where our whiskey is going to be coming from. And you see that's they're kind of overlooking the bar. So you're sitting underneath the wonderful glow of that copper. It's a remarkable complex, and a significant investment has been made, no doubt, in its building. And just the not only the building itself, but the marketing. If any of you have been following along, you've seen the very clever marketing that they've done both in the United States and further afield, even in Ireland, poking fun at Brian Nation leaving Ireland to come to the United States to distill whiskey. So O'Shaughnessy Distilling is our partner. It's in Minneapolis in Minnesota, and the Master Distiller is Mr. Brian Nation. And Brian Nation, of course, the former Master Distiller at the Midleton Distillery, who left Ireland, shockingly, in 2021 to move to the United States to open and be the first Master Distiller at O'Shaughnessy Distilling. So obviously that created a big stir in Ireland, because Master Distillers don't tend to leave Midleton until they retire. But Brian obviously saw an opportunity here, and so we're going to very kindly and very graciously take advantage of him being over in the United States and having left Midleton. You might have seen some of the ads that I shared up on our Facebook group recently and online, just the fun being poked at, everyone delighted for Brian and wishing him success from Ireland as they shake their fists at him, having left them all behind. So Brian obviously oversaw a significant growth in the distillery in Midleton in his tenure, certainly as Master Distiller. During his time as Master Distiller, you would have seen a huge rise in the demand and the range of single pot still whiskies that would have been released from the Midleton Distillery. The broadening of the Redbreast range, the spot range of whiskies, all under Brian's tenure as well at the distillery. So Brian is now overseeing it with his team. There's a big team being built there with some big whiskey names as well from the world of American whiskey, from rye whiskey, formerly from High West Distilling, for example, one of the founders of High West Distilling on board as well. So you've got Irish whiskey contributions, American whiskey contributions. I think we're all going to be the beneficiaries of what's happening in O'Shaughnessy Distilling. So let's talk about the whiskey. So what we're looking at here is our first ever Club Cask. It is one cask to begin with. In time, as our membership grows, and we see the need for multiple casks at the same time, we may explore this. But right now, as we're looking at ratios of participation to number of members, one cask is where we're going, is what we're going to go for. In the future, we may have multiple casks. So what we've got is an Irish-style American triple distilled pot still whiskey. What does that mean? Well, it's 100% American grains. It's going to be a mixture of malted and unmalted barley, and it's going to be triple distilled in those copper pot stills. So in Ireland, we would know that process as pot still whiskey. It's really not a definition that exists legally in the United States. I've seen it referred to as pot whiskey, pot still whiskey, Irish-style American single pot still whiskey. All those definitions are purely marketing, of course, because they're not legally protected or part of the American system for definitions when it comes to whiskey. So it is, again, 100% American grain, distilled in the Irish style, mixture of malted and unmalted barley. I'm going to keep checking your questions here now as we go through to make sure I get them all. But I'll get through them all at the end anyway. All right. So this whiskey then will be distilled. It has been distilled. It is almost ready for our cask to be filled. And it is going to be filled into a virgin American oak cask. So virgin American oak cask, so an oak, Quercus alba, American oak, grown in the United States. We don't know exactly where it is grown, but a lot of these oak trees in the United States grow around the Ozarks, grow in Missouri. Virgin American oak is not typically used for long maturations. It's often used for shorter maturations because it can be deemed sometimes that the oak contribution might be too significant. So it's used a lot in finishing. It's used a lot in blending. It's not often used for full maturations, but it's helpful for younger whiskies where it can give a depth and a bit of a complexity to a younger whiskey that perhaps wouldn't be present in a refill, first fill, second fill bourbon barrel, certainly. It's also going to contribute a lot of the color. So you know yourself with American whiskies, they tend to have a dark color, that caramel layer on the inside from that charring contributing very quickly to the whiskey. When in Ireland, when we get an ex-bourbon barrel or an ex-American whiskey barrel, obviously it's already extracted its first strain of the color out of the barrel, and we're getting that second contribution. So darker whiskey I'd be expecting. So virgin American oak cask is what we're getting. David says, I so prefer barley over corn whiskey. I'm excited it's pot still style without grain. Eric asks, will the whiskey be finished in a different cask? So there's no plans for it to be finished in a different cask, and there may not be any need. So there's a vision. Brian has a vision for the cask, and it's I suppose the combination of the cask and the distillate of what he expects to get at the very end. So this is something we can talk about, though, and it's something that over the course of the maturation, which I'll get to in a second, we may have some options. So virgin American oak cask. It'll be laid down then to mature, to sleep. Let's talk about the filling of the cask, though. So we got word today, final confirmation that the cask will be filled on April 26th, which is in, 2 weeks' time? 2 weeks' time, just over 2 weeks' time. 2 p.m. Central in Minneapolis. So we'll be live streaming the event. So we will also record it. It'll be on a StreamYard like this, where we're sharing live out to our Facebook and our YouTube, so you can watch the filling of the cask. And if you would like to go and be part of the filling of the cask in the distillery, shoot me an email, message me on Facebook, or you know how to find me. You all find me when you have good questions. So shoot me a message and we'll make sure that you get there. We'll make sure that they know you're coming and you can be there with Brian. We'll see you on the live stream. I won't be there myself. I will be live streaming remotely. But if somebody wants to represent, I would encourage you to go there. Book your flights now. It's a bit warmer than if we did this in January in Minnesota, so you're welcome. April 26, 2022. I'll share more details of that tomorrow as well. Should be a fun little ceremonial filling. The maturation period. So I'll start by saying as long as it takes, 4 years minimum, and then as long as it takes. So that is the minimum that Brian wants to age the whiskey for. Now, during the maturation period, we're going to learn about its progress. We're going to hear from Brian. He's going to share with us how well he thinks it's progressing, what, if anything, he would do differently, how long he thinks it'll take to reach perhaps its optimum point of when it should be bottled, when the distillate and the wood have combined successfully and have lent the qualities that each must lend to the whiskey, and he has decided now is the time to bottle it. So we'll pay attention. So we should expect to put our money away there now for about 4 years and to just get our regular updates on it. And after the 4 years is up, we'll at that stage have had some indication about its progress, its bottling, its angel share, things like that. And we'll see where we go from there. So there's a lot of kind of TBD. Who knows? We just don't know some of these things. And so that's one of the caveats here is when we're participating in this, there's just some unknowns. We don't know everything about it. And well, whiskey is it's a lot of science, but a lot of art as well. And the artist might need to take a little bit longer if it's so deemed. Let me see, Patrick asks, why just one cask? Well, there's kind of an economics thing here at play. So I would deem this cask to be one of the more expensive investments for the club of a cask. It's a $15,000 investment for us to purchase this cask. And I'm basically dividing that number into the number of shares of that cask that'll then be available, plus whatever costs we have to take payments, payment processing, just those basic costs. So we're basically saying we have to outlay that money, and we don't know if we're going to sell all of the casks. We don't know if we're going to be able to recoup all of that when we first purchase the cask. So the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club purchases the cask. We then divide that up into the number of anticipated bottles at the end of the program, the end of its maturation, which will then equal the number of memberships in the cask club. This is where it gets a little bit confusing, and I'll explain this more in a little bit because of the legalities around wording and language related to whiskey and shares and things like that. So we have one cask right now because it's relative to the number of members that we have in our club. We figured out the participation rates and various things. We asked for expressions of interest. And while we do have more expressions of interest than there are memberships in this cask club available right now, many people have asked for 2 or more bottles. So I'm very confident that we'll get 1 bottle at least to every single person who wants one, and very likely 2 to those who want them as well. So I think it's just a bit of a learning curve for us. We don't know a lot right now, and plus we don't have the ability to lay down $30,000 or $45,000 at a time, because if we don't sell it, we still have to pay for it. If we don't sell the shares, it's a lot of money to float without knowing. So I think there'll be a little bit of exclusivity here, but I think you'll all definitely get a bottle if you want one. So I think that's why we did the one cask. Hopefully that is acceptable anyway to you. Jeff asks, so this isn't like a barrel pick where we pick from several matured casks. No, we're actually buying the cask up front. So we're laying down the cask. So cask programs are different to barrel picks. And barrel picks are more common in the United States than they are in Ireland, certainly. And with bourbon, it seems to be a very common thing. In Ireland, you have the single cask program. We don't really call them barrel picks in Ireland, but you've got single cask programs, which historically have predominantly been from the Midleton Distillery, because there was nobody else with matured whiskey available for single casks. So Redbreast single casks, Power single casks went to certain bars or went to certain groups or clubs or things like that. So this is different. This is a cask program that I want the whiskey club to be more a part of, which is where we're not just selecting something based on here's 8 samples of whiskeys we've matured. Rather, we want to buy into distilleries that we believe in, or distillers that we believe in, or processes or styles of whiskey that we believe in, and then follow the journey as a community. And the idea behind it is that it's a bit like the idea of the club, which is more community oriented than just whiskey oriented. And if we can have interesting, fun experiences, be they in person or virtual, around each of our cask programs and around each of our bottlings where possible, I think that, to me anyway, that's more value than anything we could choose from and never see another person, you know? So I think the community aspect is kind of important to me. What are Brian's thoughts on the distillate? Well, Brian's very happy with the distillate, and he's certainly very happy for us to hand over our money for the distillate, which, as he should be. So he's grand with the distillate. Once the cask is on the day of the cask filling, we can get more information on that, and we can have whoever goes there might even be able to taste the new make spirit. Brian will certainly taste it, but you never know. Maybe a small glass might be passed around. Can we send the drone through Brian's brain so we can see what he's thinking? You can ask him on April 26th when we fill the cask. Will the founders of the distillery be present? I don't believe so, Debbie and Don. I don't believe so. But certainly Brian will be there. I'll ask if they will be. If they're there, I'm sure you could certainly say hello. If they're not, you'll have to make do with the Master Distiller. Brian reckons being safe on the first cask is the right track. Okay, thank you. Dearman asks, how long are you prepared to let it mature if it's not ready after the 4 years? Dearman, I would say that's up to Brian, not up to us really, because he's the expert. And I think that's what we should be buying into, is Brian saying, now's the time, or leave it another year, or leave it 6 months, or come back to me in 3 months. I'd much rather hand over my money and say to Brian, you're in charge now. You tell us when it's ready to drink and when it's something that you'd be really proud of. Because let's be honest, you can see behind me, sure, half the whiskies here, Brian's overseen the production of. I don't think there's many we'd be disappointed with. So that would be my answer on that one. Greg asks, any thought to another cask aging for 12 years? Yeah, absolutely. I think anything's open to us, really. That's for us to discuss as a club. And look, maybe we can have a discussion in a minute. Let's have a think about that one. I'll come back to that one. Brian reckons this is more exciting than a barrel pick. We just need to hope Brian knows what he's doing. He better. He's had about 30 years of training. I hope you know what you're doing now, Brian, if you're listening. Brian says he's going to say that he trusts him. All right, we're safe. And Tammy's going to sample a few more of his creations. Look at this. See, you're finding solutions already. You don't even need me. All right. So that's the maturation period, as long as it takes, but a minimum of 4 years. So over that 4 years, what's going to happen? Well, I've been working with the team at O'Shaughnessy to make this a fun, interesting, educational 4 years for us. Now, it doesn't mean that every day we're going to have programming and webinars and instructions and access to Brian. After all, you're only paying $69, not $69,000. But what we're going to do over the next 4 years is we will have, starting with our in-person and our virtual filling of the cask, we'll have twice yearly catch-ups. I don't know. What is it? With Brian. We'll stream those for those who are part of the cask program, where you can get a sense of what's happening, not just in our cask, but at the distillery. What's he working on? What's he excited about? What developments have happened since we last spoke to him? Because there's a lot happening in the distillery that I'd love to hear more about. And I think just being able to get access to Brian's brain, a bit like you were saying earlier, fly a drone through his brain, I think that's going to be worth a lot to us. So just the chance to get access to Brian and a couple of times a year is going to be helpful. Tastings, we are trying to figure out how to get over, maybe it's a couple of times over the course of the maturation, samples of different whiskies that they are working on putting out there, that we can get those samples to you as a Club Cask participant. And it won't be samples of the cask itself, but rather of other things that they're working on. I think that's really interesting, because there's a lot going on in their exploration of the blending of rye, American rye, Irish malt, or Irish pot still, Irish grain, as you see in this blend here, this American blend, the Keeper's Heart Irish and American blend. So we're working on getting you access to those. So those will be, we have to finalize those, because it's going to depend on the logistics around 250 or 244 sets of these being able to get to you. So we're going to do our best to get those, but we are working on that And if we can do that maybe twice over the course of the maturation, amazing. That'll be a great thing for us to participate in. And maybe it's there's also an opportunity for us to be part of some maybe a select number of people. Maybe we draw them out of a hat from the cask club participants, whether it's 10, 20 or 30, could even participate in a little sensory program to evaluate or to give feedback on whiskies as well. So all of those things are open and being discussed. And in the interest of getting this out the door, we don't have everything finalized, but just know that the whole goal of this cask program is not to put $69 away for 4 years, never hear about anything, and in 4 years, we're surprised to hear about this thing. It's rather that we'll be in continuous contact and we'll get some information. We'll participate in tastings, participate in events. We'll get the updates from the distillery about what's being released. As a Club Cask member, you may also have the ability to participate or purchase things from the distillery before others do, because you're a Club Cask member. And also you will, as part of your Club Cask membership, be entitled to a tour of the distillery. And that's redeemable anytime during the 4-year maturation. Now, if Brian's there, I'm sure he'll say hello. He's a busy man, and if 240 people turn up from our Club Cask program, all looking for Brian to give them a private tour, the poor man will be driven demented, so we won't be looking for Brian every time. But I'm sure he'll give you a wave, shake your hand if you're there as well. So that'll be part of the program as well. All right, let me see. Let me pause there for 1 second, and let me oil the pipes. By the way, if you haven't already found yourself one of these bottles of Keeper's Heart, bottle of 43%, and it's a blend of American rye, Irish grain, and Irish pot still. And the pot still and the grain come from Great Northern Distillery in Ireland. Not sure exactly. I think the rye might come from, can't remember exactly where the rye came from in the United States. In any case, very low cost, high value blended whiskey here. Super soft, wonderfully light and floral nose, that grain note coming through, but the lovely little hint of spice, little white pepper spice that you love in the rye whiskies coming through as well. Lovely little blend. All right, 5,000 questions I have to keep up with here. Not complaining, of course. Brian will gladly pay an additional $5 for daily updates. Brian, will that be $5 daily? Because this we can negotiate. So that'll be what? $1,800 a year? Brian, we might be able to figure this out. Being of a certain age, anything more than 12 years becomes risky. Yeah. Well, your own estate planning is outside of the purview of this cask program. So you're going to have to figure that out. One cask under nation with whiskey and crack for all. Eric, I hope you're going to go. I hope you're going to turn up for the filling of the cask if you can. Okay, Jeff says, playing devil's advocate a bit, it's not guaranteed that the cask will turn out good. What if Brian decides after 4 or 5 years, it just didn't turn out well? Well, we're all stuck, aren't we? Because let's face it, there's no guarantees. And that's going to be part of the terms and conditions you're going to have to check when you participate in this tomorrow, if you decide to participate. We have no guarantees with anything with whiskey. All we have is information in front of us. We have a track record. We can see what has been released so far. We can take a risk or not take a risk based on that information. I would imagine that if the whiskey is looking like it's on a track that is not a favorable track, we will know that long before 4 years, I would imagine. And if any mitigation steps are needed, I'm sure they'll be taken. But I wonder if we're insulting the man by even questioning that the thought that the cask could be not good. But no, you're right, Jeff. It might not be good. So here's my recommendation. With these programs, we are rolling the dice and we have no guarantees. So if that is a risk that is too much to take, I would definitely suggest not participating, only because, it could happen. I'd imagine it's a very slim chance, but nothing's guaranteed. Tony's trying to figure out how to leave it to his brother, just in case. All right, listen, I'm glad to see you're thinking ahead. Dave wants to draw the names for for the cask participants for the if there's a little tasting there. Kathleen says being part of the aging and learning about the aging process will be great. Absolutely. I would It's amen. I would absolutely agree with that. And that's what I'm really interested in is what can we learn and how do we take that information with us when we move on to our next cask program, and how does it help us understand and appreciate whiskey more? Even on my research of virgin oak cask, when Brian first mentioned to me there was virgin oak, that they were using virgin American oak, I was determined to learn as much as I could about virgin American oak, so it sent me down a rabbit hole about virgin American oak, because we don't see much of it in Irish whiskey. We've seen some of it in the Midleton Distillery, Jameson Gold, for example. I think Cooper's Crows might have a little bit, but we haven't seen it in great quantity. So virgin American oak is something that I think will be really interesting for this whiskey for us to try. Debbie and Don say the Keeper's Heart Irish and bourbon is really good. I agree, and great value. I think I got this for like under $40. The distillery is open to the public, Patrick, so you can just Google O'Shaughnessy Distilling and you'll find their website and you can book a tour. It's open right now, and you can go to the potato bar where they have all kinds of potatoes, not because it's Irish, but because it's in the site of an old potato factory, not where they made potatoes, because I don't think they make them in factories yet. Although, I don't know, the Americans, the ingenuity, it's where I think there was potatoes processed at one point. Will membership be transferable, asks Jeff. That's a great question. I hadn't thought about it. Will membership be transferable? I suppose it could be transferable. I'm just going to have to write that down and figure it out. Transferable memberships. Okay, let me think about that one. And maybe the rest of you could think about the pros and cons of that as I'm thinking about it as well. Yes, Brian, you're probably right. MGP or High West. I think it's more likely MGP, the rye. I selflessly volunteer to be part of the yearly crew tasked with sampling from the cask. Lisa, as the first person to ask this, maybe we'll allow you to be, to ensure it's aging well. Lisa, a great palate hunter, so maybe we'll take you up on that offer. Patrick wants to know, where in a retail store would you find it? Under rye, under bourbon? It's a great question. Where has anybody else found theirs? I found mine. Well, mine was transported by mule and donkey and back of a car from Minneapolis to San Diego. So no point looking in the car because it's all gone. Roll the dice and roll a barrel, says Greg. That's it. We have a couple of lawyers in the house. These two gentlemen here would be happy to consult on the estate planning issues, and they will, I'm sure, apply a Stories and Sips Whiskey Club discount to those rates, which I should also be availing of. Brian, thank you. Well, Steve, we won't be making any decisions on transferring it until we let it mature anyway. But we'll take Brian's advice and see what he thinks. And we'll see what options they come up with at that stage too. Others may have considered finishing. I'm sure it's not out of the question. The question for me is just, what does the master distiller think would be best? And it's a bit like me going to a Michelin star restaurant. I won't tell them what to cook. I look at their menu. They'll have prepared it a certain way, and I'll eat what they offer me because they've got the awards for it. And I'd be more inclined to follow that path. But if there's enough interest, I'm sure anything could be done. Johnny's lost more than $70 at a bad night of poker. Honestly, you wouldn't be long losing it. All right, what other questions have we got here? All right, lots of you commenting with each other. Brian found his in the Irish whiskey section in Indiana. Dave says, I think I have your San Diego bottle here. I don't know where I got this one. So where did this one come from? Oh, you do. You know what? Brian Nation gave me this one. I'm pretty sure Brian gave me this one. I think you did. I think I gave you my one. This is the way the Irish whiskey world works. You don't know who's given anything to who. And Steve saw Keeper's Heart with other whiskeys in those parts. All right. So lots of comments. Okay. Lots of you talking there. Okay. So let me keep going here. I've only got about 48 more slides to go, right? So let me take another sip. Okay, once matured, this answers already some of your questions. So let's assume all has gone to plan. Jeff's money has not been lost. His $70 has been safe. Brian has determined not only is it drinkable, and not only is it passable, but it is award-winning, worthy whiskey, and it's ready for us. Great. Now it's going to be bottled, and it's going to be bottled at cask strength. So it is a 200 odd liter cask based on Prediction Angel's share, which again is all going to come down to, we don't know everything yet. We're making some predictions, and we're trying our best not to make anybody upset at any time with these predictions, but it'll be bottled at cask strength. There will be approximately 244 bottles available at the end of our maturation. I'm going to tell you exactly how this works in a second. Let's talk about those bottles. Each of them will be signed, and the label will be exclusively for us. It'll be bottled for the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club. It'll be bottle number 1 of whatever the final number is, 244, 260. That number is going to fluctuate, but we're not going to offer more memberships than we're pretty certain we're going to have available bottles, so that we don't have to refund anybody. That way, if more become available, we'll be able to make them available to you, our members. What's going to happen then? They're going to be signed by Brian. So you're going to have Brian's signature, not a stamp, his own signature. His hand will be falling off him by the time he's finished. And they'll then deliver them to our retail partner. So this is where it gets, where we've had the most fun in trying to understand the legal process of setting up this program, this opportunity, this thing. See, there's not even a word legally for this thing. This thing we're doing, this Club Cask or Cask Club. Imagine, we can't even figure out the name of it, and we're asking for money. And so what's going to happen is it's going to be delivered. It can't be, I could spend hours going into all the legal reasons why things can't be done. Here's what can be done, which is the quickest way of explaining it to you. It will be delivered to a retail partner of our choice at the end of maturation in cases of 6. So we'll have all of those bottles at a retail partner. So at the end of the maturation period, you will be on the hook, if you want your bottle, to pay for shipping from wherever that retail partner is. If it's in California, if it's with Folsom, etc., you'll just have to pay the shipping or pick it up from Folsom. Either way, that's what's going to have to happen. So we will work with our retail partner, most likely Folsom, who can ship to most states to get the bottle to you. There's no easy way to do this, folks. It's been I wouldn't say a learning curve, more like a learning mountain to get up and figure out all the various pros and cons and things. And you all know yourself the different laws. And even at the distillery, they can't sell full bottles of whiskey. They can only sell, I think, is it 350 ml bottles they can sell at the distillery, etc. So once it's bottled, it's got to be shipped. And it's got to be shipped to a different state. And we're going to handle all of that. And then we will, in 4 years' time, we will get that to you. So, yeah, I mean, this is the longest we've ever projected anything in our club for our fledgling six-month-old club. But rest assured, whatever concerns you have about letting your $70 rest with us for 4 years with no tangible return, we'll figure out how to make that make you confident and comfortable in that. On the off chance that something terrible happens and the cask, while it's insured, is no longer available to us, if it's destroyed, or if for some reason something happens that prevents us from completing this, then we'll just give you all your money back. We'll figure out how to get this done. You know where I am at all times. You know how to find me. You see me online often enough. So just know that we want to make this as comfortable for you all as possible. I know that anytime you spend any money, it's always, it's hard to earn. So we've got to make sure we're spending it wisely. But look, we're investing in this program. And we'll figure out whatever concerns you have. So put them in the comments here, and I'll come back to all of them in a second. Let me just get through these. So here's how it's going to happen. So you've registered your interest already. If you haven't registered your interest already, I'm going to put the link in the comments here. It's also on our website. I'm going to put the link in here. That should go to all of you. There's a form on there that you have to fill out, and it's going to register your interest between now and tomorrow. Those who've registered their interest, and we've been asking people now for the last week and a half to do that, those who've registered will be the first to receive an email tomorrow at 6:00. And when you receive your email at 6:00, there will be some short details in the email, and then there'll be a link to a page where you'll be able to make your purchase. So here's how the whole thing works. We're setting up, for legal reasons, a club within a club. Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, of which you are, most of you, I believe, a member of, is the purchaser of the cask. So we will be handing over $15,000 for the cask. And then we will be setting up our own club within the club called the Cask Club. This happens to be Cask Club number 1 because it's the first ever Cask Club. And what we've done is we've divided that Cask Club membership into 244 memberships. And there are no more than that available to begin with. Each membership will get you all of the perks. Each membership will get you 1 bottle at the end of the maturation period. And legally how that's working is that the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club is buying you that whiskey bottle at the end of the maturation. The legally astute amongst you will immediately understand the reasoning for that and how it just makes things easier. So that we're not selling you liquor. We are basically selling you access to a club. And over the course of 4 years, you'll have lots of educational access and materials and events that you'll attend as part of this Cask Club number 1 with Brian Nation and with O'Shaughnessy Distilling. And at the end of the maturation period, you will be entitled to 1 bottle. So every membership gives you 1 bottle. Hopefully that makes sense. And that is the easiest way, considering everything we've explored, to get this done. It's $69. And that $69 breaks us even at the end of the day. Maybe not even, but it's a nice number, shy of 70. And we're not using these cask programs to make any profit. The business model of the club is based on membership, as you know. And so you're paying for these things to be facilitated, which is what we're doing. And that $69 will get you all those perks and the 1 bottle at the end. If there's more memberships available after 24 hours, we'll send another email. So what we're asking is that the first purchase you make is for just 1 bottle or 1 membership. Many of you have asked for 2 memberships. Some have asked for 5 memberships. That's down to that's going to be down to availability. So if there's more available, no problem. But how we'll do it is the email will go out. You'll be able to make your first purchase, and then 24 hours later, if there's any left over, we'll send out the email again, and then it'll just become first come, first served on those subsequent emails. After about 3 rounds of that, or 2 or 3 rounds, we'll if we're still not sold, we will put the remaining memberships out to available to our membership base. I think that's the easiest way to do it. I'm trying to figure out if people want more, do we give them upfront? But then I realized we've so many people subscribed that not everybody would get 1 if we did it that way. So if we allowed everyone to buy 3 or 2 or 5 out of the gate, we just couldn't get everyone taken care of. So I think this is the fairest way. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone getting 1 to begin with, and then I'm pretty sure those who want 2 or 3 will most likely be able to do it afterwards because not everybody wanted those. All right, so that's, again, I don't have all the exacts on this yet. Okay, so we'll send it. Yeah, so hopefully that's clear. I'll come back to it anyway. All right, questions. Let me take this off the screen now so you can see my big old mug. All right, I'm going to look at your questions now. Let me go back here. Will our bottle have its own distinctive label? Yeah, so it will have its own distinctive label, Diarmid, and we'll work on that with the team there. And it'll be different. It'll be different to this. So it will be the Keeper's Heart brand. It's Keeper's Heart whiskey, but it's Keeper's Heart exclusively bottled for and matured, of course, for us. The Keeper's Heart brand itself is going to have many expressions between now and the time our cask is released. And this is where it's going to get confusing. All of those expressions will not have come from the distilled stock in the distillery. So what's being distilled now, and for us, and has been distilled over the past just couple of months since they started distilling, is what's maturing for the next few years and will eventually be released as O'Shaughnessy Distilling's own stock. So that's what adds another layer of, I think, something special to this, is that we're having the whiskey distilled by Brian. Brian has sourced and blended and brought together all these whiskeys for the current Keeper's Heart lineup and done an incredible job of it. We're going to taste not just what he has married or vatted together. We're tasting what he has distilled, which to me is what we're really participating in. So it'll have a unique label for us. Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, signed by Brian. If we wanted to have our own names in it, I think it would take a little bit longer. We talked about it, but let's play that by ear. We have some time to figure that out. Okay, whiskey will be bottled at cask strength. And answers Eric's question. All right. Brian's signature is worth $70, says Jeff. All right. Well, Jeff, your bottle just went up to 140 there. Thanks for letting us know. Road trip to Cork, says Jeff. Eric wants to know if there's any chance we can have the barrel aged at Prince's Paisley Park and have purple accents on the label. Well, Eric, this is a level of specificity and individuality that we had not considered, and maybe we've missed a trick in not involving Prince, or maybe resurrecting a previously unreleased Prince track as the track of our cask. Leave it with me. We'll see if we can get some kind of Paisley or purple colorings or schemes. Definitely a purple accent, I think, would be a great idea. Jennifer says we're allowed a distillery tour. Is person 2 allowed? No, so the tour is for one person, and if a second person wants to come, I think they'll just have to pay for the tour, which I don't think is expensive in any case. So if you want 2 people to do it, maybe you benefit from 2 memberships if those are available to you as well. Something to consider, because you then also get 2 bottles at the end. Let me see. It's a 700 ml bottle, Chris, not 750 or 375. It's a 700 ml bottle. So they're releasing 700 mils. All right. Great question from Declan. I was going to answer this one. I have written down. Is my cask membership predicated on my Stories and Sips membership remaining valid? So it's a great question. So obviously, if we're waiting for 4 years, not everybody will have the interest or the financial wherewithal. Things happen. But if over the 4 years, you're no longer a member of the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, but you've already purchased a membership of the Club Cask, you're still going to get your bottle at the end of 4 years. You're just not going to be able to participate in any of the programs when you leave the club, because it's for our club members. So that's part of the terms and conditions, really. I think it's the fairest way to do it. You'll still get the bottling at the end. You still own the share in the club that owns the cask. But if you're not a member, you won't be able to see the things that'll be behind kind of membership paywalls, for the Club Cask. And again, I think that's the fairest way to do it. An unfair way to do it would be to force you to have membership. I am part of whiskey clubs where if your membership lapses, you are obliged to sell back your cask shares to the club or the society at the cost you paid for them. And I don't know if that's a great way to do it. I don't think it really builds community. I think people have to leave membership or leave clubs for various reasons. You might say, well, I don't want to be part of this club because it's no good. I don't care. Whatever is your reason, that's yours, and not for me to decide or to dispute. So you'll still get the bottle, but I don't think there's any way for me to figure out how to let people in and out of kind of membership areas if they're not part of the club. Hopefully that makes sense. Bandit and Cletus delivering east of the Rockies. Greg's gonna get the forerunner to the NASCARs to be able to deliver. If they don't reuse the barrel, can we all get a small piece of it? That's a great question. All right, I'm going to write that down because I had a question about the head of the barrel too, whether we could get the head of the barrel and maybe have it in storage and use it for our Stories and Sips lodge, castle, mountain retreat, lake, home, whatever we end up having in time. All right, so transferable membership is one question. The next one is, can we have the barrel? Can we have the barrel? All right. Have we considered a live camera on the cask, says Rick, so we can watch it for 1,460 days? Would you believe, Rick, we have not considered that. And Rick being in the film business and with access to such cameras, if you are willing to donate your time, doesn't need to be 1,460 days worth of your time, but time to maybe rig some kind of setup there for us to view, I would happily donate a page of the Stories and Sips website to watch the cask. See, you didn't think I was going to turn it around, didn't you? Leo says, sounds fair. What happens if we drop out of the club monthly? Yeah, so I hope I answered that. Look, I'm very conscious that any expense is an expense that has to be evaluated on a regular basis. And it's not my job to punish anybody for not being able to be part of a club or to have to let go of an expense every now and again. Like I said, if you participate in this, you'll get access to the very best you'll get. The very least you'll get is access to the bottle at the very end, which really, look, I think that's worth it. I think all the educational and the participatory program events make it worth 10 times more. But I think this is the only way I could figure it out. I rack my brains trying to think about it, but I think this is the the fairest way. If you've got a better way, please let me know. Please let me know. And yeah, here's the time to be talking about it, really. Brian reckons that's the best way. Money paid for your share, you get the bottle. Yeah, I think so. Hopefully you all agree with that. Scott says the chance to purchase the cask, maybe a lottery. Well, that's a good idea too. What we turn it into, like a little sauna. You can make a little sauna at the back of your house. You can make plinths from the barrel. Yeah, lots of things we could do. Head of the barrel at the gate of the castle. Nobody ever accused this group of thinking small, let me tell you. Brian says, Jeff says, you heard him. The castle will be involved. That's going to have to be part of the terms and conditions, is that a castle is not part of this purchase. Patrick, thanks Steve for sharing the link there. Patrick wondering where would I find the link to express interest. And if that link isn't working there, you go to the Stories and Sips website and there's a link for the Whiskey Club. And under that, there's a link that says Whiskey or Club Cask or Whiskey Casks. There you'll find the link to all of this. Stories and Sips barrel watches in the making. Yeah, maybe we can take shifts. I'm sure Brian Nation would love us to be hanging around the distillery 3 different shifts, just sitting in front of the barrel watching it. Not creepy at all. Chance of a mini turtleneck in the bottle. Anything for a price, John. I've tried pricing mini turtlenecks, believe it or not, and they're not cheap. I couldn't find a way to get a mini turtleneck done for less than $20 for a mini turtleneck with shipping costs and, yeah, the size of them. So if you want to add $20 per bottle, you can probably get it done. But I really think we should put that money towards whiskey. Okay, lots of you sharing the link there. Thanks for helping out those who haven't got the link yet. Patrick says, when he ranks his expenses, I'm right at the top. Fantastic. Thanks, Patrick. I'd like to think it's the whiskey that is the expense and the great guests we have. Not cask related, but how's the crack going along? All right, we'll talk about the crack in a minute. Thanks for that question. Over the Niagara Falls in the cask. Think of the media. Now, Rick, again, you've outdone yourself with your suggestions and offers of volunteerism here. Not only are you rigging a camera for 4 years, you're going to go over the waterfalls in the barrel. Rick has many times over earned his keep as a committee member in the club, as you can see from his comments. In the fine print, castle not included, 100%, 100%. Yeah, lots of notions in this group, says Johnny. Yeah, there's so many. Tony says, Barry, will you meet me in Glasgow the first week of May? Tony, why would I do that? Why would I go to another country to meet you? What's going on at all? Didn't we have a good old sing-song up in Gormley's pub? By the end of this session, Brian may start questioning his cask. I'd be 98% certain Brian's lurking in the background watching the to see what we're after talking about here, to see what he's on the hook for. Tony knows a guy that went over the falls twice in a barrel. Will he meet you in Glasgow in May? To drink. Well, I won't be in Glasgow in May. I'll probably be in Cork in May. So I hope you enjoy Glasgow. It's not Ireland, like. Hope nobody sold you a trip to Ireland and they're sending it to Glasgow. Okay, so what have we missed? What have we not covered? I wrote down some questions as well. All right, let me take another sip here. God, mouth's got very dry with all the questions. Okay, so if you're a member of the Whiskey Club and you're not based in the United States, can you participate? The answer is yes, you can. You can. The only thing is you're going to have a US address to deliver it to, or have some kind of system or process or arrangement in place to get the bottle from a US address to you. That's not something we can get involved with. But if you have a US address, a friend, a cousin, a relative, hired help, whatever it is, it can be done. Trust me. If you ask in the group, people will give you the answer on how things can get done. So it's open to people outside the US as long as you're a club member. So that's the other thing. So this is where it gets confusing. You have to be a Stories and Sips Whiskey Club member. That's where you pay your monthly membership due to the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club membership, because the link to purchase tomorrow will be behind. You'll have to log in to get to the link. to be able to purchase. And if you're not a member, then it's $20 to join. It's $20 a month, and you can cancel anytime. That's the so this is only available to members, so it won't be available outside. We're not selling this to the general public. If this ends up on an auction site in 5 years' time, it's because a member decided they needed to liquidate it for money. It's not because we ever sold it. It's not because we ever released it publicly. So that's something that's important to us, is that things stay within the club, or they're made available to the club. Members do what they want with. So that's the idea of a club. It's exclusive. It's for those who really want to go deep into Irish whiskey, which you all want to go deep into Irish whiskey, I can tell you. I answered the question about whether you have to stay a member or not. And of course you don't. You will still get an email from me in 4 years' time letting you know what's happening your bottle, which we will be purchasing for you at the end of the 4 years. Are you guaranteed a tasting during the membership? I mentioned the chance of samples being shared out over the course of the maturation. No, you're not guaranteed a tasting, but we will do our very best to get as many members involved as possible. So stay tuned on that one. In terms of what will happen tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I will send out the email to those of you who have expressed interest. And here's where I could actually take your feedback now, because you're the club members. You should be deciding this, not me. So because I asked you to express interest first, I think you should get the first chance to purchase. And then you should also get that link a day later for the second round and a day later for the third round, right? Now, that means that if you're a club member and you didn't express interest, my question to you would be, should you still get the email, or should you not get the email? And should you only get the email after everyone who's expressed interest has decided how many times they want to participate? That's what you need to tell me, or just give me your thoughts on it. I'll think through it a little bit more in the next 24 hours too. And while you're thinking about that, oh yes, Dave, we poor Dave is trying to get July organized in Talnua Distillery, and we keep coming up with things for August, September, October, November, December, January, and nothing for July. All right, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, Brian's in with the sports analogies. This should be like a sports draft. Those that responded first get to draft their bottle as many times as possible. Okay, so that seems like that's my system, right? Which is first chance to buy it, 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, 24 hours later, same. 24 hours after that, the same, presumably. Yeah, so okay, 2 rounds then opens, says Dave. Okay. Scott says, I would think those who express interest get the first chance. They do. That's guaranteed, right? So those who've expressed interest, let me pull up my sheet and see. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. I bet the numbers have gone up since we've been on here. Okay, so we now have 305 expressions of interest for 244 guaranteed memberships. So we're shy 60. Now, of those expressions of interest, I would say half are looking for more than one bottle or more than one membership. So that means everyone's going to get at least one if they want them. 2 rounds then opens, says Dave. Leo says, first day to us. Okay, so us being, I presume, those who registered express interest. Second round to the club. And then 3 and 4 to the group. So we won't open it up to the group unless they're a Stories and Sips Whiskey Club member. That's the only thing there. Okay, so I think it seems like we're all kind of on the same page. Only send tomorrow's email to those who express interest. Okay. Okay, I agree. Make sure all who express interest have a shot at one for sure. Yeah, I think that's right. No, this is not for the crack, Tony. This is for the whiskey barrel or Club Cask. So the crack will come later. We'll be looking for more money from you now in a few weeks for the crack. There's no end to it. This is for our Club Cask with O'Shaughnessy. We'll do that before you go to. Hopefully, we'll do that before you go to Glasgow. Okay. All right. So look, what we've done is we've given all of our club members, sufficient notice that this is happening. I will send out. Yeah, and look, I think the most hardcore of you all have been following along anyway to this as we've gone along. So those of you who express interest will all get an email from me tomorrow at 6:00. If by 6:05, 6:10 you haven't got an email, check your junk, check your spam, check under the sofa, behind the cushions where the coins gather. You never know where this thing can end up. And I will... Yeah, I know someone's going to be upset. Whatever we do, we'll have ignored someone or we'll have overlooked somebody somehow. Because I'm trying to think, if I post to the group tomorrow saying, check your emails now, we'll have 20 people who say, well, I didn't get any notice that this was happening. Okay, so what I'll do is, we say nothing to the group tomorrow, so we'll just send out the email. Okay, Brian says, given the number of notifications you've received, I think we've had ample opportunity. Okay, that does seem like my line of thinking. It does feel like I've posted a lot about this. Jason says, I'm pretty sure I expressed interest for 2 memberships. Is there a way to check? Jason, for you, I will check it live. You did. You expressed an interest in 2. Jeff says he'll be amazed if this goes past 2 rounds. Well, here's what I've noticed happen in some of these things, and I'm part of these programs with other clubs myself as a participant. People drop out after expressing interest, or people's circumstances change very quickly and can no longer participate, or somebody listens to the Q&A with me tonight and they're like, no, not participating in that thing. In any case, things change. So I don't know if it'll go past 2 rounds. We're rolling the dice and we're seeing what will happen. I'm not bothered either way if we sell out immediately or we don't. It doesn't matter. It will eventually all be spoken for. And I think we can certainly figure it out. But I don't know how fast it'll go. It'll be interesting to see. Ed says, I don't even remember if I expressed interest. Well, Ed, go to the link there on our website under the Whiskey Club drop down where it says Club, what does it say? It says Club Whiskey Cask. Go to the Whiskey Cask link and you'll find the chance to add your details. But I can do a live check for you now. That's what we'll do. We're good like that. Ed, you did. You expressed interest. We have you. See? Live checking. Mark has a good question. Are future cask memberships going to buy matured casks to bottle, or are they all going to be bought at fill? All right, so great question, Mark. Thank you. When we launched the Whiskey Club, the idea was that there would be multiple bottlings a year. Matured whiskey, we might get hold of a 12-year-old whiskey like this, the Crack, which will arrive very shortly. So we have a 12-year-old single grain there, which is going to be with you very shortly if you order it. And so we'll have a couple of those, maybe more a year. As the membership grows, there will be more opportunities to do more of those. So, for example, we're in talks at the moment with Nick Ryan from Thomond Gate Whiskey. We're in talks with JJ Corrie again. We're in talks with Waterford Distillery. Those are a few. I'm just looking at my list on the wall there of some conversations that we're having at the moment. Those will all be for bottled, mature whiskies. Those will be the club whiskies that'll be bottled up exclusively for us. It won't be available anywhere else. Separate to that, we'll lay down casks. We will, as a club, invest in distilleries through their programs for casks. So we're basically saying, look, we want to invest in your future by laying down money now for a whiskey we'll get in some years' time. So I think that we should always do new make, like new fill, newly laid down spirit for our club casks. And then for our club bottlings, of course, we seek out unusual, interesting whiskies that will be made available exclusively to us. But I'd love your thoughts on it. If that is a ridiculous idea, or you think there's other ways you've seen, let me know. But I enjoy being part of programs where there is a couple of things. One is where you've put your money down and you forget about it, and then somebody knocks on the door and says, I've got your share of that cask that was laid down 4 years ago or 5 years ago. That's amazing. Or also to be able to follow the journey of the cask along the way. I think it'll create great content for us and materials throughout our the still house area of our website too. So you'll be able to log in and check on things and maybe view some videos with the distillers or the blenders of those whiskeys. So that's my thoughts on that one. Patrick wants to know if he can borrow $70. Not from me, I have to sell some of these whiskeys on the shelf back here. Everyone gets a free live check. Chris, if you really want it, I'll give you a free live check. Let me see if you're on the list. Never accuse me of not being customer focused. Yeah, Chris, I see you. I see many Chris's. All right, you're in. You're on the expression of interest anyway. No, Scott, you didn't miss the order email for the crack. We're waiting on that. Could be a few weeks yet. How many gallons of Keeper's Heart are being distilled? That's a good question. I don't know, Tom. Maybe I'll ask that question. I think there's more of a question there around, what's the annual production? You might have noticed as you saw the drone going around, you saw tall column stills as well. There's gin, looked like gin vodka stills, but also tall, perhaps grain stills. As well. There will not be a resale market. No, Patrick, it's not legal for us to sell, or we can't sell alcohol privately, and we can't facilitate the sale of alcohol. You won't be able to resell your membership of this either if the $70 is something that you need back. I think here's where where we could have a clause. And I've thought about this actually before you asked, Patrick, which is if for some reason during the maturation period you need that $70, then just reach out to me and I'll personally buy that membership back from you. And of course, you don't get a bottle at the end. I get the bottle. But if anybody is stuck throughout the maturation, just reach out. Listen, we know things pop up and emergencies pop up and a tire blows or a part needs to be replaced or whatever it is. Maybe the $70 is needed. So if I can be of help, it's going to have to be at my discretion, because if 100 people turn up looking for $70 back and maybe living in a tent out the back garden. So just give me a shout and we'll do our best to help you out. Dave has a good point. So many new things we can participate in. No need for multiple casks in this one. It's true. And also, as many of you have seen, the Irish whiskey world is growing and growing and growing. And I'm delighted to see so many of you that happened upon Irish whiskey through our community over the past couple of years and through our Facebook group, started going down rabbit holes, discovered a brand, a whiskey, a personality you liked. And now I see you having chats with these folks. I see you meeting up with people virtually, doing your own tastings. It's amazing. So there's so much going on in the world of Irish whiskey that doesn't all have to happen with stories and sips. There's other things out there. Of course, we want to be a great home for you in the United States for Irish whiskey. But as Dave says, maybe rather than 2 casks up front and trying to sell that out, we do multiple things like the cask, then the crack coming, and then we'll be rolling very quickly into our next quarterly tasting. So lots coming. And then, of course, July in Talnua Distillery. We'll talk about that in a second as well. Jeff says I should sell that orange one. I will not sell that orange Jameson for any money. I enjoy it too much. In fact, it's half gone. It's that good. John will give me $40 for the top shelf. What if they were all empty, John? Lisa no longer trusts her past self. Got shelves in the brain. Past self to have signed up. Can I get a live check? You can. We'll do it. These are all taking place at no cost to any of you. Lisa, you're in. I see you in there. Patrick says, I was thinking more of future members that may want to join. Okay, that makes more sense. Yes. So it's something that we have thought about as well. And it's something that we're going to have to consider with the crack as well and with future whiskey bottlings. So one of the inspirations for the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club is the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. I make no secret of it. I admire much of what they do. There are some things they do I think they could be better at, or we will be better at, but I think they do remarkably well and have created a market for malt whiskey globally because of their programs. And one of the things they do is they make available their bottlings on their website. They're often single casks in short runs, but some things don't sell out immediately and they live on their website until they sell out. That means if I join now and I wasn't a member of the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society when they released something that I might like to try, but it was released 6 months ago, if it didn't sell out, it's still there and it might even say 4 left. And then I can go in as a member and I can buy it. So we'll do the same with all of our releases. I don't expect everything will sell out all the time. Some things just won't resonate. Some things might be bad timing, whatever it is. Sometimes we might release too much. I don't know. We'll do our best to time it and try and get it right as much as possible. But what a terrible complaint to have that we're left with a few that are available to new members or old members to go back in and say, actually, I have $70 spare. I'll take another share of that cask, or I'll take another bottle of the crack or what have you. So yeah, so it won't be a resale area so much as club availability or still available, that kind of a thing, or last chance, Michael blames this group for introducing him to all these wonderful whiskies. We will make no apologies for this introduction. Rebecca just filled out the form again. Yeah, look, if you're not sure, just fill it out again. It just means you're going to get multiple emails, but better to have more than one. I'm not sipping the crack right now, Nina. This is purely my research bottle. I am experimenting with this in many ways. The reason I'm experimenting with this is because this is a bottle that has an ABV of 100 it's got a proof of 126. 126 proof. There's not many whiskies now you'll find on the market from Ireland at 126 proof or 63% ABV. And I'm experimenting with this in different formats: cocktails, with water, with ice. I've been tasting it in different ways. I didn't get this full, by the way. There was only about this much missing. In any case, I've been experimenting with it because there's a whole educational thing we're going to have to put together for this whiskey, because this is not your buy it off the shelf, throw it into a glass and neck it whiskey. This is a grain whiskey, Cooley Distillery, which is known for having some of the nicest, most flavorful single grains that have been made in Ireland in the past 20 years. Made this, distilled this in 2009. And it's a single grain that was aged primarily in bourbon and then transferred to an American-style Madeira. Very unusual notes: potpourri, lavender, some kind of definitely get the corn notes, maize notes. So it's a 90 to 95% corn, 5% barley. So that's an unusual whiskey for most Irish whiskey drinkers. And the reason why I wanted to release this with 2 stacks is because I think single grain whiskeys are having a moment and they are having a chance to shine on their own. So we actually drink single grain whiskeys every day when we're drinking Jameson and Bushmills and Tullamore Dew or Paddy or Powers Gold Label, because single grain makes up a good portion, certainly in Jameson and Bushmills and Tullamore Dew, makes up a good portion of the blend, but they don't often stand alone for us to try and enjoy them. Single grain whiskies derive most of their flavor from the barrel, in the sense of it would be perhaps corn might be, certainly in Ireland, the least flavorful of the grains. Barley be far more flavorful, which means we get to understand the contribution the wood makes to the spirit, which is why this one is an unusual one. So I want us to experiment with this in a kind of almost like a guided tasting, where we'll try this in 4 different ways the night that we open it all together. And I know we're going to see a complete difference in how we approach this and maybe how we approach other whiskeys, but certainly it's going to open our eyes. So I would look at this whiskey as this is a kind of a continuation of our journey. We're not softballing you with this one. This is going to put it up to you. And some of you might taste this and say, it's not for me. And others might say, now we're talking. And I think that's the beauty of a club. We make things available that are not widely available, couldn't be commercially viable on their own. And we get to try them. And we get to try them at as low cost as is humanly possible to bring them to you. So how about that? All right. We take another sip here. Great questions coming in. This is a great session. Mm. All right. Steve says he'd be more interested in cask purchases from multiple distilleries instead of multiple casks from one. Yep. Yeah, I think that's the model we'd be going for, Steve, 100%. And we're a little bit hamstrung in terms of number of whiskies we can release this year, only because of, well, two things. One, we're finding our feet as a club. And the second thing is actually logistics based. So I've actually spoken to a couple of smaller brands that have had to pull their releases from the United States because they couldn't afford the cost of getting them over. And it would push their whiskey to a price that they couldn't compete on the shelf. So logistics and shipping are a huge challenge at the moment. So we're just going to have to work our way through this and figure out solutions as we go. But I definitely think we'll get to this. The other piece of the cask program is something we have to figure out, which is the thing that Dingle Distillery had to figure out after all their whiskey matured, first started maturing in 2016, 17, 18, as their whiskey came of age and they had these founding father cask programs. And nobody had any clue. Well, what do we do now? I won't say they didn't have any clue. I mean, they did their research at the distillery, but it was uncharted territory because there was no distillery selling casks on the island of Ireland up until that point. So suddenly you had some people who wanted to sell their casks, some people who wanted to sell it back to the distillery, others wanted to bottle it, others wanted it to be matured further. And it created a logistical, I wouldn't say nightmare, but a lot of work to help figure out that for everyone. So what we've got to be conscious of is, and when I say we, what I'm really saying is, Barry, will you ever remind yourself that when you open up cask opportunities, to set aside the time in 4 years in your calendar to be able to handle all that's going to come with the getting of the casks, everybody? Because what's going to happen if we have 6 or 8 casks all coming to fruition all at the same time? So Ayrshire, by that stage, we might have a few team members that can help us out if we're lucky, or you'll all volunteer your time and effort in return for some liquid payment. So that's the other bit. But yeah, honestly, look, if we can roll this thing and grow it, the goal is to get more people introduced to Irish whiskey. It's not just for a small number of people to have loads of whiskey. It's for many people to get a chance to try from smaller, unusual distilleries and brands, styles of whiskey they couldn't taste, education and entertainment along the way, hopefully. So yeah, we'll definitely aim for that, Steve. Don't forget a few for the future pub. I will be buying a few shares of the membership myself. Don't you worry. I will be ponying up for our future pub. Maybe a sneaky bottle of the story on there someday. Stranger things have happened. Stranger things have happened. I mean, is there one behind me? There's one there. Look, there's one on the shelf. That's an unopened one. Stacey has filled it out 2 or 3 times. She will not miss it tomorrow. Scott would love a chance to get another bottle of the story. There won't be any more stories really available. Look, if I'd imagine that the 3 or 4 bottles that remain in my ownership will end up on the shelf of the Stories and Sips lodge, club, ski resort, whatever it's become in the last 5 minutes, castle, estate, island. What are we buying on that? What are we buying now? That's where they'll end up, and they should be enjoyed by the measure there. And if we buy an island or a castle, they'll have to be considerably marked up to cover the running costs. Do I know what the age of the single grain is in my whiskey? I do. It's 12 years old. This is an age statement single grain. So it was bottled in 2021. Bottled in 2022. So it's 12 and a half years old, at closer to 13 years of age. 11 3/4 of those years were spent in bourbon, and then it was transferred for the last, 12 years in bourbon, and then almost 6 months in the Madeira, American style Madeira cask. So yeah, it's a 12 full years guaranteed. So it's a 12-year, it's an age statement single grain. It's the most different of all the single grains that Two Stacks have released. Fionnán O'Connor reckons it's in the top 5 of his single grains he's ever tasted. I'll take that. I wonder if I can print that on the label. But it's been fun experimenting with it, because it is so different to everything I have on my shelves here and what I would taste normally. And it's as much learning for me as it will be for anyone else, I think. Thoughts on the current paddy? being sold for $13. Patrick, if you can find Paddy for $13, eat it up. Is that the one I was sharing on? So I share a picture of that in the group of a Paddy for $13 from the airport. I think I did. Oh yeah, I did. I lose track. Yeah, 13 euros. It was available in Cork Airport. A litre for 13 euros. Just goes to show you how much it costs them to make it. Not that much. Brian's a massive single grain fan. Brian says, proof it down to what you like. This is my point exactly. And it is an eye-opening realization when we figure out that if we can get it at cask strength, we get far more whiskey for our money, because you're getting almost 2 regular bottles of whiskey for the price of 1, because I'm not charging you for water. I'm just charging you for whiskey. When you're drinking at 40%, well, you're paying for 60% water, aren't you? So we'd want to have less water and us to add the water to taste. And if you even bring it down to 20% yourself, then you're going to get 3-4 bottles out of this, which is amazing. Have Midleton or Bushmills shown any interest? Yeah, there is interest. There are massive, massive challenges on this with large companies, and most of it is due to the United States. So many of you will have seen other communities or groups have maybe, or bars or restaurants, things have from Midleton. It's Midleton primarily. Bushmills hasn't done a single cask offering outside of the Causeway collection since 1999. Midleton with their Powers and the Redbreast single casks, Midleton very rare single casks. Those can be done in Ireland much easier than they can be done anywhere else. They can't be done in England or Northern Ireland or the United States in nearly as easy a way. In fact, it's nigh impossible. And so that has been the challenge. So there's a conversation ongoing. Let's just say there's heads being put together at different stages to see, could there be a workaround? Could there be a thing? Could it be possible? So there'll be talks. Brian says, in 4 years, I'll have a 17-year-old. I'll need that bottle. And some of you have invested in W.D. O'Connell. He's got a cask program. Very good. Always good to support him. Right, what else? Tony will swap me. This is an offer that we can almost certainly refuse. I'll swap you my slightly used bottle of the Story for the one on your shelf. Right, Nina says, please tell me what I need to do. I'm having a family meeting and I can't keep up. Check your emails tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern, Nina. I think you're in here. Yeah, you already gave us your email address, so check your emails tomorrow at 6 o'clock, press purchase and buy one, and you're good to go. Where's Kieran this evening? Kieran left. He drank half my whiskey and then went home. This is what people do. Fionnán O'Connor, Kieran Quinn, the list goes on. David Mara. They come in the door and they know exactly, somehow they manage to know exactly where to go. And like a Tasmanian devil, they come through the house and they leave with bottles, empty bottles spinning on the floor. And all I hear is doors closing as they leave. And it's a beautiful part of whiskey friendships. There's so many comments. Fair play to you. The water goes on sale next week. See, I'd be missing a trick, wouldn't I, if I didn't sell the accompanying bottle of water to go with this? I'm not fast enough. I'm not fast enough. All right. Good luck tomorrow, Brian. He's off. Oh, yes. Okay. Steve with a good reminder. Okay. So we got some events coming up. Knocking everything over here. We've got some events. July is the first event. Club event, whiskey group event, Facebook group event. Dave and Stacey, who are here in the chat at the moment, have been very busy putting together an event for July 4th weekend, July 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, where Talnua Distillery in Colorado, for those of you who are not busy with family and would like to travel, or you are busy with family, just want to get away from them, you can go to Denver, Colorado, fly into Denver and take the short little drive to Arvada or get a taxi. And you will go to the Talnua Distillery, where there will be a group meetup. And we will be this week, hopefully, sharing more details. Dave has been promised last week, but that's my fault because I have not been able to get through the 124 emails that I looked at prior to coming on here tonight. But we'll have details of that next week. As part of that meetup, there will be a tour and a tasting that'll be hosted by the great folks at Talnua, Patrick and Megan, who will lead you on a tasting of pot still whiskies made in the Irish way in America, inspired by their honeymoon experience of enjoying Redbreast for the first time, sitting at Sonny Malloy's bar in Galway, if I do recall correctly. In addition to that, there will be a whiskey release, and we won't share the details of it right now because we don't have them finalized, but there will be a world first whiskey release where the first of this whiskey will be made available to whoever turns up from our club. In other words, you will have the first rights. If you want the whole cask of it, you can have it. And it'll be the first in the world. It's never been done. And when it's released, the first people to get access to it are the people who go to the distillery, or the people who give those who are going to the distillery pockets full of money to buy the whiskey on their behalf. Then they can get it. There will be a discount on the bottle and on the trip, on the tour for club members, but it's open to everybody. If you're not a club member, don't worry. They'd still love to see you. And Stacey and Dave would still love to see you too. Sunday, the 3rd of July. Thank you, Dave, for the clarification on that. Yeah, Mark is right. So Connacht Distillery and others are doing some cask stuff with some USA collaborations. Yeah, so there are smaller distilleries that are doing it. The challenge is not the smaller distilleries. So, for example, who is it I was talking to this week that are doing... Yeah, there's a couple of other smaller brands are doing a store pick that you'd be familiar with in the US as kind of single cask programs. The larger companies, because of their distribution deals, can't, and that's where it gets challenging. So distribution deals grant rights to a territory, a region, a city, a state, whatever it is, typically statewide distributorships in the United States. So the hypothetical challenge is in a couple of ways. One is a whiskey that is made available to a certain state, to a certain bar, depending on the state, or made available to a certain store. Depending on the state, it's only legally permissible if that same opportunity is available to every liquor license holder in the state to participate in, not just one that's been selected. That's one challenge. The second is that if the distributorships are not interested in supporting the sale or supply of a whiskey in their state that they didn't have a hand in, then it won't go ahead. And let's be honest, for a company the size of Irish Distillers, getting a single cask of whiskey into America is not a priority for them when they're shifting 100 million bottles of Jameson. So it's an expensive, not easy, not efficient thing. And so it's really a challenge. Midleton is working on it for some things that they're doing. And I think most of their allocations have been done for this year and early next year, but we'll still have some conversations. By the way, Connacht Distillery, for those who've not heard of it, because most people haven't. I don't know, Mark, if you're working with them or you're just a fan, but I had Connacht Distillery's Batch 1, their first release. So Connacht Distillery is a distillery in Mayo on the west coast, northwest coast of Ireland, in Connacht, the province of Connacht, hence the name Connacht Distillery. And they released their first own spirit, their first own whiskey, which is very young, 3.5, 4 years old, I think. And they released their Batch 1 late last year to not much fanfare. In fact, we never hear about them because they don't talk about themselves. I think their marketing is really, really poor for the quality of their whiskey, because it turns out that whiskey was one of the best new whiskeys I've tasted in a year. The best new whiskey to come out of a distillery as their first release in a year. Amazing. It's really, really good. So I'm not sure if more of that batch 1 has headed to the United States. Most likely will be. So keep an eye out for Connacht batch 1. I'll see if we can get something done with them somehow, but it's amazing. It's one of the best. And I bought a round of it for a bunch of lads when we went out last week, all whiskey heads, all whiskey guys. And I did a blind thing for them. I just said, right, I'm buying you all a whiskey. You won't know what it is. And they would do the same for another round. And we had a great night tasting things. None of us knew what it was except for one person. And it shows how little we all know about whiskey, because most times we get it wrong. But I brought this out and everyone thought, God, that's a lovely whiskey, very nice. And everyone overthought what it was. Older whiskey, more complex, or more perhaps expensive than it really was. And everyone was pleasantly surprised. So Connacht Distillery, watch out for them. Batch 1 is out there in the wild. How much time does one have to respond after 6 p.m. tomorrow? So 24 hours, Patrick. 24 hours to get in your order for 1. And then the email will go out again. But if we send that out tomorrow and enough people buy just 1, then we're done, right? And that could happen in 5 minutes. Hopefully it doesn't, but you never know. Okay, so I'm hopping all over the place. Did I answer all the questions on Talnua, Dave? What have I missed? I'm missing half the comments here. I'm going to go back here and look at them. That is an option. Kevin with the thinking hat on him. If Midleton does a cask for a club and the club members just go to the distillery to pick it up. I mean, that could definitely be done. Would that be of interest? I mean, we could do that. Subject to them selling us a cask, of course. If that was of interest to people, I know it would make it hard for a lot of people, but everyone's got a friend going over, pick up my bottle. I don't know. Or we could put it somewhere in Ireland. Speaking of club members, have we designed an ID card? A secret handshake? No, we haven't done any of those things yet. The ID card is a interesting one. I'm trying to figure out what do we get when we're a new member? And I've got some ideas, but an ID card was something that was a physical representation because there was no such thing as a digital thing behind it. In other words, there was no digital access to anything. Today, if membership lapses, well, you still have the ID card. What do you do with the membership card? Is it still of use to you? Is it used to grant access to tours at distilleries who've given members a discount? I don't know. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that maybe a new club member pack looks like. We'll figure out one. I'm working on it, but it's I haven't got the answers to it yet. Have I considered an annual membership? I have, and I just haven't been able to get to it. I have considered it, definitely. I have. Lifetime membership, says Jeff, even better. Jeff, throw a number at me. I might stay up tonight just to code that if it's worth my while. Or we can get Barry to pick up all the bottles and we can get it at his house. Oh, sure, listen. I tell you what, with friends like you, the kindness. Secret handshakes with Patrick. He wants a secret handshake. Should do a coin. A coin's not a bad idea. Oh, Rick says membership card is an NFT. A t-shirt for Stories and Sips. We have t-shirts, but the shop was kind of put to the back boiler, the back burner as we figured out the rest of the club. So the shop will be coming back with some items on it very soon. A QR code on a club app. It shows your current status. Okay, do we have any coders, developers, software engineers in our club who would like a project and be paid in 27-year-old Redbreast? We'll raise a glass to Andrew Schumann, group member in good standing, who completed his Shamrock Club presidency today. Sláinte to Andrew. great friend of ours. Good man, Andrew. Sláinte, I have a sip for you. Jeff is willing to lay down the immense sum of $42 for his lifetime membership. This is one I will have to take back to the committee, and we'll weigh it up and we'll let you know. Kevin's going to learn to code for 27-year-old Redbreast. We are going to get Copita. So here's the biggest challenge. The world has gone mad with shipping and logistics. And nowhere is it more mad than when you ship things that are empty. Glass is an empty thing that gets shipped. Not only are you shipping air, therefore a bigger box to protect it, you're also shipping the most fragile of things. So getting a fulfillment partner that can handle all this has been the challenge, but we're working on it. So what I'm going to have done is I'm going to have Glencairn Copitas. So they're slightly larger than these ones in terms of the stem, and then slightly smaller up here. We're going to have Glencairn Copitas made, and we're going to have some available for shipping from Europe and some available for shipping from the United States. So those are being worked on as well. I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we've hired our first Stories and Sips Whiskey Club employee to work on a lot of stuff with me. She's amazing. She's behind the scenes. I will not share who she is, or you'll inundate her with requests and want to know what's coming up next. But suffice, she's not from the whiskey world. So she's working behind the scenes, and it's not Mrs. Stories and Sips, to manage a lot of communications and the website and all of the various things that go into the running of the club and the communications. And that's going to free me up to do more of this kind of planning of swag and giveaways, promotions, and lots more whiskey things. So Copitas are definitely on the list. Brian thought Jeff is already banned. He's still in here. How did he get in? There's a back door in here. I know it. Someone's after finding it. Jeff's after finding it. Do we still get a discount? Yes, 25% off shipping. That is not going away. We're only going to expand upon the discounts. We're working right now on a discount with Irish Malts, who are now able to ship to a lot of the United States as well. Irish Malts wants to come up with something really good for you. These are things that just take time. I've no fast button on it, but Irish Malts were working on a discount in time. And again, thank you for all joining me on this journey, but in time, there'll be more in-person discounts for things like if you go to a certain distillery, and we have a way of figuring out membership, etc., that you may get a tour, you may get a discount, things like that. That'll be all part of it. Free Barry up for some more songs. No, listen, you don't want me. Singing is not what you hire me for. Surely it's to bring all this together. All right. Greg got his delivery this week. Good man, Greg. Hopefully you got something decent. All right, so let me look now. What are we at in terms of expressions of interest now? I knew it would go up being on here. So just a reminder for those of you who are not Stories and Sips Whiskey Club members, that you will have to be a member in order to get the link to purchase your membership of the Cask Club, which has the Club Cask. This is going to get very, very confusing after a couple of whiskeys. So if you're not yet a member, my suggestion is join up before 6 o'clock tomorrow, so that by the time 6 o'clock Eastern comes tomorrow, you'll be able to pop in and get your club membership for your Club Cask Club membership. In other words, your one bottle and all the perks that come with it. That's my recommendation. So I see there's probably, so this is where we might lose, or we might open up some memberships because maybe a dozen expressions of interest from folks who aren't yet members. So we'll include that on the email tomorrow, that if you're not a member, you must be. But in any case, expressions of interest are easy. Not everyone will commit to them, and that's okay too. Tony, we had a great old singing session in Gormley's. A great old session. Yeah, so the Irish Whiskey Auctions shipping is not seamless yet, but Anthony and Katie have been doing tremendous things to help us with this. So if you're a member of the Whiskey Club, you just need to let them know. But when you're checking out, you need to indicate that you're going to collect it instead of shipping. All right, Michael's got the details there. Speaking of Gormley's in Cleveland, it's where in December we opened up the bottle of 46-year-old Silent Distillery after a 2-night, well, we had a 2-night session. On the second night, we opened up the 46-year-old. There are now discussions for the opening of a 47-year-old because Midleton Silent Distillery Chapter 3 will be released very shortly, and another bottle may or may not be winging its way to Ohio. So we may be repeating it all over again in a different way. So we're already having discussions with Gormley's and with other locations to create an elevated few nights of sessions that would culminate in a black tie affair, which Brian Riley will have no problem with, as he already attended in full black tie, as did his lovely wife. And so this is there could be an elevated experience around a 47-year-old bottle of Irish whiskey in Gormley's, all for charity again, same charity too. So those are discussions that are ongoing at the moment. So maybe we'll see some of you up there for either that or some tastings we do before it. Brian wants me to confirm that he's in. Brian, you have been in here for an hour and a half giving us suggestions, and you didn't even know if you were in. Brian, you are. You've been in a week. You were an early bird. Jeff's out. Black tie. Jeff, we could get you one of those tuxedo t-shirts. They work. Patrick wants to know if I'm in Cork for the foreseeable future. I'm all over the place, but I am in Ireland for more time than I'm in the United States at the moment. But I'm back and forth. I've actually had to go back a couple of times in the past few weeks. I haven't told anybody about it for various family reasons. And due to go back again in September, but probably not before it. So the reason that I'm spending more time over here this year is a couple of things. One is, well, we've got family over here and we want to see them. And the second is building a whiskey club that involves exclusive whiskeys and getting access to things you can't get access to when you're in the United States. It's particularly useful for me to be able to shake hands and see the whites of people's eyes and sit down and have drinks with people who in turn do us favors and kindnesses. And so I think it's a good place for me to be for the moment. But while the whiskey club is virtual primarily, it's nice to be able to hop around. So Cork is the home base for now. So this is the, but it could change. Alrighty. Any more questions, folks? I've got your questions to ask about transferable memberships. I need to figure out, can we have the barrel? We'll figure that out. Other than that, I think I've got all the questions answered. For those of you who are club members, so here's an idea I've been throwing around, that while I'm in Ireland and when club members come to Ireland, while it's not physically or for health reasons possible to meet up with everyone and have drinking sessions, much as I'd like to, there will be some chances occasionally where it's humanly possible. We're in the same place or nearby to say hello, have a whiskey, have a coffee, have a drink, whatever it may be. It's always great to meet more whiskey people. But what I was thinking of doing was, if you're a club member and you come to Ireland while I'm here, I could arrange for a little whiskey box, a little handshake, a little welcome to Ireland from my bottles here. So I might give you 2 or 3 little samples in a little box, and you can tell me where you're going to be, give me the address in Ireland, and I will get it to you. and I'll get you a little 2 or 3 samples. You'll have no control over it. Don't be pointing to the top shelf saying, I want that. But I could give you 3 little diverse little bottles, and it could be a little once a year, should you be in Ireland. Now, if you're coming over every weekend on business, knocking on my door looking for whiskey every weekend, I'll be changing my locks. But a little Irish handshake, I thought, could be a nice little thing to do. So it's on my list of all these other things to do as well. But hopefully we can get that. Hopefully we can get that done. Brian loves the build-ups. Whiskey gift packs for tourists. Look, I know I lose the run of myself, but believe it or not, all these things we've talked about, I'd like to think we're getting to all of them. Not immediately, but tell me one thing that we've talked about that we haven't at least either done or are down the road of planning. I'd like to think we're good on our word. I'd like to think it. Tony says we can try that as a text next month, just in Glasgow. Tony, you're going to have an awful trouble understanding the people around you if you're listening for an Irish accent when you're in Glasgow. Leo, can we get the info on the crack? Leo, you may have missed that. We went through that, I think, but if I didn't, is there anything we're missing? When is it available? It's still in customs. It's in a customs clearance warehouse in San Francisco. It landed in San Francisco last week. As soon as it clears the customs warehouse, it'll be transported to Folsom Wine and Spirits, where it'll then be packaged up, and then we'll give you notice of when it's going to be made available. I'd imagine it'll be at least 2 weeks. There's a few things I want to enclose in your packages when you do buy the crack, so that you're not just getting a bottle. There'll be a few other goodies in there, compliments of the Whiskey Club as well for you. Nothing fancy now, but just some other bits and pieces in there that we're going to include in the packaging. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, and then we're finalizing the pricing on this. Even though this is a 12-year-old whiskey, we think we can bring this in at a lower cost to you than the Story. The Story was $89. This has been ridiculous in terms of its cost of shipping. There's more money has been spent on the shipping of this than has been spent on the whiskey, which is an awful state of affairs. The only people making money in the whiskey world today are FedEx. But we think we can bring this into you for cheaper than the Story. We're finalizing that. We have to figure out some delivery fees. But stay tuned. As soon as we're out the door with our Club Cask, we'll start into the story about the crack, and we'll roll along there with the build-up and what's going to happen with that as well. Saw Barry again this weekend. Got yet another sample of Jameson Orange. Yeah, you wouldn't know what I'd give you in the pack, but maybe there'd always be something good, you know? And that could be the Jameson Orange. Oh, Jake with the... See, look, Jake, kind soul here. He's just not just there with his hand out. If he's got his hand out, it's to give me something as well. That's a good idea. I might get some whiskey too. Great point. Did you see Dick Max in Dingle, famous Irish whiskey pub in Dingle, did a great thing. I think Jeff Adams, I think I saw you posting about it, that if you brought a bottle of whiskey from a different part of the world, they would swap it for a bottle of Irish whiskey so they could build up their shelf of random, unusual Australian, Canadian, Taiwanese whiskies, etc. Thought that was a great idea. Oh yes, Brian. No, we closed the loop on it. we didn't leave it out there. We seem to have forgotten about the castle, though the bus will more to make up for it. Right. So the castle was discussed, explored with our legal counsel, opened to the group, and to be fair to your credit, we probably raised through expressions of interest. Bear in mind, nobody put their hand in their pocket or wrote a check, but there was a good $700,000 accounted for very quickly in terms of interest. But logistically, it couldn't be done. But don't think for a minute that I don't have my ear out or my eye out, or I'm not sharing with people who are involved in such things or may be supportive of such things, such notions as a destination. It's not over yet. We might have closed the door, but it wasn't for lack of pursuing it anyway. Is Andrew here now? Andrew, you missed your toast. We'll raise a toast to Andrew because he's here now. Andrew, congratulations on completing your presidency. A fine presidency, one that involved the designation of a Stories and Sips Day, if I recall correctly, a November date, if I'm not mistaken, at the Shamrock Club in Columbus every year. We'll have to celebrate it again this year. Sláinte to Andrew on his presidency. Stacey, you wouldn't know where I've got my eyes. October 23rd, that's the date. I thought it was November. All right. So I think we've answered all the questions. I think we've put some flesh to the bone. We now are up to, so we're 50. How many are we short? Yeah, we're short. If everyone got all the whiskeys, all the shares of this cask they wanted from 1 to 5, we'd be short about 55 shares. But I think we can definitely get everybody 1, and we can probably get the people who want 2. So again, keep an eye on your email tomorrow. Hopefully it's clear now what's going to happen. If it's not, don't you worry. It'll be clear in the email. It'll be clear on the page you buy from. You'll be required to check a box saying, Barry, this was so clear. It could not have been clearer if it was new make spirit. And then you will proceed to make your purchase. And I will be completely off the hook from anything that's happened because you didn't read all the fine print. But we'll put all the details in there. Everything is in there so that you're not under any illusion as to what's going to happen. It's going to be fun. Guys, we're part of something amazing here. Brian Nation's first whiskies that are going to be distilled and matured in the United States, we're going to have a chance to purchase. Think about the look of amazement and how impressed your friends in the whiskey world are going to be in 4 years' time, and how many whiskey friends you'll have in 4 years' time. Look how many you've made already. And they will gather around in awe to look at your bottle with Brian's signature on it, and then you will slowly pour out a little teaspoon for them to sample, because you wouldn't want to give any more away lest there be less for you. What a time that'll be in 4 years. Can you imagine not participating, knowing that that lies ahead? That's your future. That is the privileged position you will be in, to impress your friends and colleagues with your whiskey knowledge and how clever you were to get involved in something so early on the ground floor of it, no less. What a time to be alive. Brian's just loving all the club is doing and will do. Good man, Brian. Appreciate the feedback. Thanks for all the work. Thanks, Sean. Thank you all for supporting and for being part of it. I will be doing, I mentioned this on the last lock-in. If you weren't here for the last lock-in, Kieran Quinn, one of our group members and former Irish basketball national team player, was here. We had a great old sipping session here. And one of the things that came out of the lock-in, always something comes out of a lock-in, was that because so many whiskeys, I buy so many whiskeys to taste them, or very kindly, distilleries or brands might send me a sample, or I might go visit a distillery and they'll say, take home these. And we tasted some of those on the lock-in. One of them was the Tullamore Dew pot still whiskey. It's never been released, 7 years old. Amazing. We loved it. And I really enjoyed sharing it with Kieran and sharing it with you. And I've recognized that one of the things I don't get a chance to do a whole lot of is share my thoughts on some of the whiskeys that are coming along. One of the unique things about our club is that because we're not sponsored or paid for by any brand or distillery, we can be as honest as we want about all the whiskeys. If we don't like something, we can tell people we don't like it, or we can give our feedback, honest, good, bad, or indifferent. We can talk about it. And I want to do more of that because I think that's what we're all here for, to learn from each other and to hear what we honestly think about something. So the lock-ins, which went on for 63 weeks, for those of you who are new here, every Friday for 63 weeks during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, start of the pandemic and on, for 63 weeks, we did a lock-in. We missed 2, I think. So 65 weeks. We did 63 out of 65 weeks. And every week we had a 4-hour session. It's a wonder I didn't end up in hospital at the end of it. But we had guests on and music and the whole lot. And it was great crack. It was unsustainable for liver reasons. Let me put it that way. In any case, I thought what we could do, and it came out of the last lock-in, is we'll bring back a pared down version of the lock-in on a less frequent basis. And it's going to be called the Sip Session. And the Sip Session is a chance for us to taste and sample whiskeys that have come across my table in the previous week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is between sessions. Might be an hour long, might be an hour and a half, maybe an occasional guest will come on. But I'll just line up, hey guys, I've got 6 whiskeys that I've got. You want to try them? I'm going to try them for you. I won't be sending them out, but I'll put them all past, and we'll taste them. We'll talk about them. We'll have a bit of crack. We'll do it live like this on Stories and Sips. You don't need a membership. Anyone can watch it. And I think that would be a chance for us to get together and connect, because that is one thing that we must keep doing. We have to keep connecting even when things are opening up. And so if that's of interest to you, stay tuned. We'll put that in the details of our MASH bill, the weekly newsletter, and it'll also be on social media. So that's going to happen, the SIP session. I'm going to release a list of potential of the upcoming dates within the next week. And I'll give you the next 2 months worth of SIP sessions. So you'll see what dates to put in your calendar. It might not always be a Friday night. Maybe one of them is a Thursday or however, but I think that'll be a good one. All right. Steve wants to know which Connacht. It's called Batch 1. It's their own single malt. It's the only one that has come 100% from their distillery. All right. 2 hours and 17 seconds. How about that? Half a lock-in or twice more than I thought I'd be here. Good luck tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you all grab your share of the memberships of the Cask Club. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, message me, tag me on Facebook, and you'll be the only ones to get that email tomorrow. And yeah, should be good. Historic moment. And then, of course, April 26th at the distillery, at O'Shaughnessy Distilling Company. You can go there in person, or you can watch virtually. We'll stream it. We'll create an event like this. You can all watch the filling of the cask. It'll be a bit earlier in the day. It'll be 2 o'clock Central Time, but we'll record it anyway. You watch it on your phone. You can watch it later. It'll be available to watch. Dave wants to know, was it the same as the initial release, but not? Yeah, it's the same one as that. Correct. Yeah, that's it. Sinead. Thank you all. Cheers, folks. I'll see you in the group tomorrow. If anybody's got any questions or trouble ordering, let me know. And we'll, yeah, thanks all. I'm really excited. Looking forward to participating in this with you. And we're really lucky to do it with Brian Nation and O'Shaughnessy Distilling. Sleep well, and we'll see you tomorrow. Slán. Good luck. Cheers.